The taxi braked so hard that Nia's forehead almost hit the back of the front seat. Her hand shot out to catch herself. The seatbelt cut into her shoulder. "Watch it," the driver snapped in Korean, glaring at her in the rearview mirror. "People like you never know how to sit still." He said it like she had just caused the car to jump. She swallowed down the sting in her chest. "I didn't do anything," she said quietly, also in Korean. He snorted. "Yeah, that's what you all say." Cars honked behind them. He jerked the wheel and pulled back into the lane without signaling, muttering under his breath. Nia unclenched her hand from the strap of her bag and forced herself to breathe evenly. There was no time for an argument. Not today. She glanced at the digital clock on the dashboard. 11:07 a.m. She was already cutting it close. That morning, she had woken up before sunrise. She'd ironed the blouse hanging by her closet twice, even though she wasn't wearing it yet. It was folded neatly in her bag, waiting for the moment she'd change. Her phone had buzzed as she tied her braids into a low ponytail. "Are you on your way?" Jiho had texted, her Korean colleague at the prosecutor's office. "Yes," she had typed back, "leaving soon." "Don't be late," he'd sent with a winking emoji. They finally gave you a whole session. Make them regret it, in a good way. She had smiled at the screen, taken a breath, and told herself the same thing she always did before stepping into official spaces. You belong here. Now, sitting in the back of a taxi with a driver who clearly thought otherwise, those words felt brittle. He cleared his throat loudly. "Where did you say you're going again?" he asked, as if he hadn't heard her properly the first time. "The government complex, building C," she repeated in Korean, her pronunciation clean. He glanced at her through the mirror like he was testing if she was copying the words from an app. "You work there?" he asked. "Yes." "What, cleaning?" he muttered. She heard him perfectly. Nia stared at the back of his head. Short black hair, gray at the temples, a small balding spot near the crown. Taxi ID clipped to the dashboard with his photo looking a little younger, eyes a little less hard. She looked away. "I have a meeting," she said simply. He gave a humorless laugh. "A meeting," he repeated. "Everyone has a meeting these days." The radio played low in the background, news about the economy, then an ad. Outside, the city moved as usual, but inside the small car, the air felt thick and narrow. "How long have you been here?" "I mean, in Korea," he asked suddenly. 8 years, she said. He let out a small, incredulous sound. 8 years, he echoed. "And still taking taxis everywhere? No car, no husband to drive you?" Nia's jaw tightened. "It's faster today. There's no parking at the complex." He shook his head. "There's always a reason," he muttered. "Always the victim, always an excuse." She looked at the side window, forcing herself to count street signs instead of the insults. "You people always like taxis, right? No license, right? Or your papers are, what do they call it? Processing." He said the last word in broken English, mocking. Nia's fingers curled around her phone inside her bag. She could hit record, she knew it. She'd given that advice to others more than once. Document what you can. Instead, she took her hand off the phone. She wanted to be ready for her presentation, not shaking from a fight. "I have a license, I have residency, I pay taxes, same as you." He scoffed. "You think it's the same?" he said. "I was born here. My father drove a bus until his back broke. This is my country. I bleed for this place. You come, you complain about racism, about microaggressions, but you're still here, aren't you? Must not be so bad." She didn't trust herself to answer that with her voice trembling. At the next light, he turned right. Her eyes narrowed. The navigation on her phone, which she had quietly opened to track the route, showed straight was faster. "Excuse me, if you go straight instead of turning, it's faster. There's usually less traffic this way." He let out a loud, exaggerated laugh. Of course, he said. Of course you know better. You've been here 8 years, I've been driving for 20. But sure, tell me my job. It's not about your job, she said. It's just the route. You think I don't know why you're saying that? He cut in. You people always complain about money. Too expensive, too slow, too this, too that. You live cheap, you eat cheap, but you want to go to our best places and then argue over 1,000 won. She inhaled sharply. I didn't say anything about money. Not yet, he said, but you would have. He accelerated just enough to jolt her back against the seat again. Her phone buzzed in her bag. She pulled it out. Jiho's aim lit up on the screen. She answered quietly. Hey, she said in Korean. I'm almost there. How's the traffic? His voice came through, cheerful and warm. You're not late, are you? The deputy chief is already here. Looks serious. She glanced at the driver. Traffic is heavy, but I'll make it, she said. Okay, Jiho replied. Don't forget to mention the subway incident from last month. They reacted to that one. I know, she said. The driver suddenly laughed loudly. Oh, he said, making her jump. Important call? Naya's grip tightened around the phone. I'll call you back, she told Jiho quickly, and hung up. The driver clicked his tongue. So even your boyfriend speaks Korean, he said. Wow, you people really get around. He's my colleague, she said, already tired of explaining. At where? The chicken place? He said. At the prosecutor's office, she replied. He stared at her in the mirror. Then he burst out laughing. The prosecutor's office, he repeated. Today everyone is a lawyer. Tomorrow you'll tell me you're a judge. She felt a bitter smile tug at her lips. If only he knew how close he was. I don't need you to believe me. Can we just drive in silence? Silence. He chewed on the word like it was offensive. Why? Am I making you uncomfortable? Yes, she answered honestly. He snorted. Welcome to the club, he said. You think I'm comfortable when I walk into a store and see everything changing? When I hear languages I don't understand on my own bus? When my grandson comes home and tells me he learned about Black Lives Matter instead of Korean history? So you take it out on strangers in your car, strangers who have done nothing to you. That's what you think. You take the food from my children's mouths. Foreigners take jobs, take spaces, take money. Then you lecture us about diversity. He spat the English word like it tasted sour. Do you know how many taxi drivers lost income when they made the airport direct bus? When they built new subway lines? Now you come with your apps and your fairness and your laws, and I'm supposed to smile and open the door for you. Naya listened to him vent, her anger tangling with something else. She knew he wasn't entirely wrong about the system failing him. She also knew that none of it justified his words. I'm not your enemy, she said softly. The system that underpays you is. You are the system, he shot back. You and your office friends. He said office friends like it was an insult. She almost laughed at the idea that she and her colleagues, constantly fighting for scraps of change, were the system. The car slowed suddenly. He pulled into a convenience store parking lot and shifted into park. What are you doing? She asked, pulse spiking. Buying cigarettes, he said, unbuckling his belt. I need a break. All this lecture is giving me a headache. What about the meter? She asked. It keeps running, he said casually. My time is money. My time is money too. I told you, I have a meeting. He waved a dismissive hand without looking back. Relax. You people are always so dramatic. Everything is racism, hate crime. Sometimes it's just life. Not everyone has to like you. I don't need you to like me. I need you to do your job without calling me you people every 5 minutes. He rolled his eyes again. They drove in tense silence for a while. Then, because he couldn't leave anything unsaid, he picked it up again. "You know what my grandson asked me last week?" he said. "He asked me why some kids at his school have to sit in special classes for Korean. Guess who those kids are? Foreigners, mixed kids, kids who don't speak like us. But the teacher said we have to be patient. If I talk about standards, I'm the bad guy now." "Being patient with children isn't being a bad guy," Nia said. "It's being decent." "You think I wasn't patient?" he said. "I raised 2 kids on this salary. They did their military service. They followed the rules. And still, when they look for jobs, the companies say, we need global talent, we want foreigners, we want English. And then they point to people like you. So you hate me for the choices of people who would never even sit in your taxi?" she said. He didn't answer. The government complex loomed ahead now, tall and imposing. He slowed as they approached the security checkpoint. A guard stepped forward, uniform crisp, expression neutral. The driver rolled his window down halfway. "Drop off," he said in Korean. "She says she works here." The way he emphasized she and says made the guard's eyes flick to the back seat. Nia lowered her window and held up her leather ID wallet. The guard leaned closer. For a second, Nia saw his gaze scan her face, her hair, her skin. Then he looked at the ID. Recognition flashed. "Oh," he said, straightening immediately. "Good morning, Prosecutor Johnson." The driver's head jerked toward her so fast his neck popped. The guard shifted his attention to the driver, his tone cooler. "She is authorized," he said. "Please proceed to the main entrance. They are waiting for her." "Prosecutor?" the driver repeated under his breath, like the word was foreign. Nia slipped her ID back into her bag, watching him in the mirror. His mouth opened and closed twice before any sound came out. The guard stepped back, raising the barrier. The taxi rolled forward slowly. The driver's hands were stiff on the wheel. You really work here?" he asked finally, voice small. "Yes," Nia said. As a translator?" he tried weakly. "As a prosecutor," she answered calmly. He swallowed so hard she could hear it. They reached the drop-off zone. He parked. His chest rose and fell faster than before. He turned in his seat as she unbuckled her belt. I didn't know. I mean, you don't look like." "Like what?" she asked. "Like someone who belongs here?" His face flushed. "I didn't say—" "You did," she said quietly. "Many times, in different ways." He looked at his hands. "Life is hard," he muttered after a moment. I'm just tired, angry. Sometimes the words come out and you aim them at the easiest target, the one in the back seat who can't fight you without risking safety, the one who looks different, the one you expect to be powerless." He flinched at powerless. "That's not," he began. "I didn't realize you were—" "Someone who could hurt you back," supplied she. "Someone with a title?" He went silent. She reached into her wallet and pulled out cash. "How much?" she asked. He stared at the meter, then back at her. For a second, she thought he might say, "Forget it." Then he named the full amount, including the time he'd wasted with his break. She paid without argument. As she handed him the bills, their fingers touched. He pulled his hand back like hers was made of fire. "Keep the change," she said. "Consider it payment for the case study." He frowned. "Case study? You'll understand if you ever read my work." She opened the door. "Wait," he said, the words slipping out before he could stop it. She paused, half out of the car, and looked back at him. His eyes had lost that cold superiority. Under the embarrassment and fear, she saw something raw. Shame, yes, but also confusion, like someone realizing the story he told himself his whole life might not hold up. I'm sorry," he forced out. The syllables sounded heavy on his tongue. "I shouldn't have spoken like that. I thought you were just—" "Just what?" she asked. "Another you people?" He winced. "Yes," he admitted. She studied him. "How many people have you talked to like that?" she asked. "How many silent back seats heard your anger and went home feeling a little smaller?" He didn't answer. "Don't answer me," she said. "Ask yourself later." She straightened. "You're right about one thing," she added. "Life is hard. For you, for me. But if you only punch down, it doesn't get easier. It just makes you cruel." He blinked rapidly, eyes suddenly shining. "Do you hate me now?" he asked in a low voice. The question startled her. "No," she said after a moment. "I don't hate you. I hate what you chose to say, and I hate that your words feel familiar." She adjusted the strap of her bag. "You told me I don't belong here, but I'm going to walk into that building and do my job anyway. You can decide what to do with that." She stepped out of the taxi. He watched her walk toward the entrance, watched the security guard open the door with respect, watched the receptionists behind the desk stand up straighter. A man in a dark suit hurried forward, smiling. "Prosecutor Johnson," he called. "We are so grateful you could come. The hall is full." He extended his hand. She shook it, then disappeared inside. The taxi driver sat there for a moment too long, engine idling. The horn from the car behind finally jolted him. He drove away, but his thoughts stayed parked in front of that building. Prosecutor. All the times he had said "you people" to strangers, none of them had had the word prosecutor in front of their name. But they all had names. He had never asked them. Inside, Nia followed the event coordinator down a corridor to the conference hall. "Are you okay?" the woman asked, noticing the tightness around Nia's eyes. "I'm fine. Just got a little preview of today's topic." The coordinator frowned. "In the taxi?" Nia gave a small, humorless smile. "Where else?" They stepped into the hall. Rows of officials, civil servants, and community leaders filled the seats. The deputy chief prosecutor sat in the front row, next to a handful of faces she recognized from previous committees. Her stomach fluttered. She had stood in courtrooms, argued motions, cross-examined witnesses. This was a different kind of judging. Jiho caught her eye from the side of the room and gave her 2 thumbs up. She allowed herself a tiny nod. The moderator introduced her credentials, her work on hate crimes and transportation bias, and then gestured to the podium. She walked up, set her notes down, and looked out at the faces. Men in suits, women with laptops open, some already checking their phones. She didn't look down at her slides. "I was going to start with statistics," she said, "but something happened on my way here that I want to start with instead." The room quieted. "Today," she continued, "I took a taxi." A few knowing smiles, some eye rolls. Taxis were notorious for a dozen different reasons in that city. It was supposed to be a simple ride, but the driver decided before I had finished giving my destination that he knew who I was, what I was, and where I belonged. She recounted some of the conversation, not all of it, just the bones. The "you people," the assumptions, the "you don't belong here." She did not say his name. She did not describe his face. This wasn't revenge, it was evidence. "Now," she said, "nothing physically violent happened in that car. I was not harmed in the way some of our cases describe, but I arrived here with my heart beating faster because I had to spend 20 minutes reminding myself that what he believed about me is not true." She looked at a man in the second row who had been skeptical in previous meetings. "Some of you," she said, "have asked why we need new policies, why we can't just tell people to ignore rude drivers, why we use big words like discrimination for small moments." Silence. "This," she said, "is why. Because 1,000 small moments become the air someone breathes. Because one bad day for a driver can become the 100th time a passenger hears they are less than human." Someone in the back shifted in their seat. In our surveys, she went on, Black residents and other visible minorities report changing their routes, avoiding certain lines, and paying more for private transport just to avoid comments like these. That is not a small discomfort. That is a barrier to work, to education, to health. She clicked the remote once. Graphs appeared on the screen behind her. She moved through case studies, testimonies, legal gaps. She quoted drivers, too, those who were overworked, underpaid, abused by passengers. This is not about hating taxi drivers, she said. It is about naming a pattern, one that hurts both sides in different ways. At one point, she paused. I want you to imagine, she said, that every time you sit down in a car, someone you've never met feels entitled to tell you that your existence here is a mistake. A rustle of discomfort ran through the hall. And I want you to imagine, she added, that when you finally get to a place where you are supposed to be listened to, a job, a hearing, a courtroom, you have to carry that weight into every sentence. By the time she finished, the hall wasn't just quiet, it was heavy. The applause, when it came, was not loud and showy, it was steady. It lasted longer than she expected. As she stepped down, the deputy chief prosecutor leaned toward Jiho and whispered something. Later in the hallway, Jiho caught up with her. You killed it, in the good way. I don't know, she replied, exhaling. We'll see. He walked beside her. What happened in the taxi? He asked softly. She hesitated. Same thing that happens to a lot of people. Today it just had good timing. He nodded. You going to file a complaint? He asked. She thought of the driver's face when he heard prosecutor, the way his voice had scrambled to find an apology. I'm going to write it down, for the record, but I don't know yet about a formal complaint. Jiho looked at her. You're too generous, he muttered. Or too tired. They both laughed, but it was a tired sound. That night, in a small apartment on the other side of the river, the taxi driver sat at his kitchen table, dinner untouched. The TV was on in the background, news anchors talking over images from the government complex. Today's conference on discrimination and access in public transportation featured a strong speech by prosecutor Nia Johnson. He looked up sharply. There she was, on the screen, in her blazer and blouse, speaking calmly. The captions paraphrased her words. He turned up the volume. His wife, drying dishes at the sink, frowned. Isn't that the woman you were talking about earlier? The one with the accent? He winced at his own words being repeated back to him. Yes, he admitted. His teenage grandson, sitting on the floor scrolling his phone, glanced at the TV. Oh, the boy said. I follow her on social media. She does videos about law stuff. She's cool. The driver stared at him. You know her? He asked. Not like that. She's just famous. She talked about that subway case last year. Remember? The old man at the subway who yelled at the woman for speaking English to our kid? She explained why it was illegal. The driver looked back at the TV. He remembered that case. He thought the man on the subway had been too much, but he'd also understood the anger. She was in my car today, he said. His wife dried her hands and came to stand closer, studying the screen. And? She asked. What did you say to her? He opened his mouth. The words, you people, hovered there. He began. I wasn't kind. His grandson looked up from his phone. Helabeji, he said quietly. Did you say the things you usually say? The driver felt his throat close. He remembered every petty comment, every bitter jab. Maybe, he admitted. His grandson shook his head. You can be angry at the government, at the companies, but if you talk like those people online, you're just like the comments you yell at me about. The driver bristled. It's not the same, he said automatically. Why not? His wife asked softly. He didn't have an answer. On TV, Nia was closing her remarks. And if we want safer cities, she said, we must accept that respect is not a luxury to be given only to those we understand. It is a minimum. The segment ended. The driver reached for the remote, then set it back down. He sat there for a long time, his food growing cold. The next morning, rain streaked the taxi windshield. He started his shift the way he always did, checking mirrors, adjusting the seat, glancing at the photo on the dashboard. Around midday, a young man waved him down. The driver pulled over. The passenger opened the back door. He had dark skin and a backpack slung over one shoulder. His Korean was clumsy when he gave the address, words stumbling. "Sorry," the passenger added in English. "My Korean, not good." A month ago, the driver would have rolled his eyes. He would have muttered something about learning the language under his breath. Today, he heard the echo of his own words in another voice. He glanced at the mirror. The passenger looked nervous, as if he expected to be scolded. The driver cleared his throat. "It's okay," he said, slowly but not unkindly. "We'll get there." He repeated the address to confirm, then tapped it into his navigation. The young man visibly relaxed. "Thank you," he said in halting Korean. The older man drove. He almost slipped once. When the boy's phone rang and he answered in another language, the driver felt the familiar itch to say something, to complain about loud foreigners on calls. He tightened his grip on the wheel, swallowed the instinct, and said nothing. It felt strange and heavy, like holding a weight instead of throwing it at someone else. He thought of Nia's face when she said, "Try not to decide who belongs." When they reached the destination, the boy fumbled with his wallet. Sorry, he said, trying to count the bills. The driver named the amount and waited. As the passenger handed over the money, their fingers brushed. The driver didn't flinch this time. "Have a good day," he said. The words felt unfamiliar out loud, but not wrong. Nia never knew about that ride. She never knew how many times, if any, he caught himself in the months that followed. She didn't need to. Her work wasn't about fixing one man. It was about planting enough cracks in enough old beliefs that someday, somewhere, things would break in a different direction. If this story kept you watching to the end, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. What would you have done in Nia's place? And have you ever been told you don't belong somewhere you had every right to be?